Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The Browns failed to finish yet again, lost 41-32, and fell to 3-9, guaranteeing another lost season. But oh, was it a fun game? Jameis Winston threw for 497 yards, and Jerry Jeudy caught 9 passes for 235 yards as the Browns and Broncos traded big plays. Two of those were pick sixes thrown by Winston. Here to discuss, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of Go, the WKYC Morning News. What's going on, Chud?
Wow, hi there, Scott. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. It was good. Ate a lot. Did not win poker, so that disappointed me.
Oh man,
Yeah.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, well, that's good. You ate a lot. Yeah, I did. I did as well. It was a great Thanksgiving. Boy, how about that Ohio State game?
I know. I just read a Columbus Dispatch story about whether or not to keep Ryan Day. I don't know. I don't have a huge opinion on, keeping him or not. But I tell you what, there was no doubt that he was tight and that team was tight. You could tell
Yes.
out of the gate that just by looking at right the facial expressions and not to mention all the calls on offense, the conservative nature, but you could just feel how tight everyone was, and it's tough to win like that, man. It's tough to win playing like that. So he better win some playoff games.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. At halftime, I was with a group of people, and I just said, "Man, they look so tight, so nervous, like almost like." And I know everything. It's almost like they put too much into the game,
Yeah.
and I know that's the way it is, and that's the way it has to be. But man, you put so much into it, and right now Michigan has their number. I I just don't think if they win a national title or even go to the national title game, I don't see how you fire him. You
Yeah.
can't win a national title and then fire a coach. And now if they don't go to the national title game, I think he's gone because I mean of the weight of that game and what it means, and to be 1-4 against them, and not just 1-4, but they like how bad it looked and
Right.
offensively, like they have all those weapons and running the ball as much as they did. And then how about that stat? I think it's like 22 straight games. The team that's rushed for more yards wins the game. Just I don't know. I I mean, man, could you imagine a coach getting fired if you win it all?
No, I can't. It would be interesting to see how far he would need to go. If they lose the title game, Um, do you fire him? I guess it depends how that happens. If he coaches tight in that game, or it's bad clock management, right? Maybe that's how he winds up getting fired. If you win the national championship, I don't think there's any way you can fire the guy. And I think then would be a time for a conversation about maybe adjusting the priorities. Is the priority winning the national championship or is it beating Michigan? And I think that I'm not saying I have that answer, but I think that's a legitimate discussion. And I know that NFL and college are two separate things. But if the Browns lost both games to the Steelers and won the freaking Super Bowl, nobody be complaining. And I get it.
No.
I get it's not Michigan, and it's not Ohio State, Michigan. I understand how much importance that is, and it's really difficult to win a national championship when you play Michigan every year, so that's more tangible. Um, but we're in the age of the college football playoff and the national
Yeah.
championship, and Ohio State's going to be there every year, or should be there every year, or whatever. Um, Maybe that should mean more. And it's awful. It's just, and I was listening to my buddy Zach Jackson's podcast, and he had the Mount Union basketball coach on there with him, and he was just saying how tough it is to put all your eggs in that one game. Like it's really hard to coach like that. You want it to be about process, and you want it to be about bigger things, right? It's not just about one game. And when it boils down to one game, and I get why it is that one game, right? Everybody's Michigan's Michigan. But that's a tough way to live. It just is. But I get all the frustration. I get all that. And I think you're right. Unless they make a run, you probably will get fired. But it's just interesting that it's become this behemoth. And if you're going in the wrong direction, it's really hard to reverse course, in that rivalry.
Yeah. Well, and if it was not the college playoff and they didn't make the playoff, he'd probably be fired now. But it's like you said, it's a different age with the college playoff and 12 teams. And you said it's a tough way to live. Well, the problem is when you see guys like Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel live that way,
Yeah.
you know it can be done. But you're right; it's a rough way to live. I have to say this: my brother-in-law, I know he wants to see Michigan lose every game. You know, they. I've always said this: I want Michigan to be good because it makes that game better.
Mm.
And you know, now I know they weren't ranked this year, but let's be honest. I mean, Scott, back about 2018, 2017, I wouldn't say the rivalry was dead, but boy, it was pretty lame. Boy, it's back now. I mean, because Ohio State was dominating for so long. Now you have Michigan dominating here. You have the fight at the end of the game. You have, you know, the storylines that go with it, along with everything else. Boy, the rivalry is top notch right now.
Oh, there's no doubt. And when the underdog, they're 20 point underdogs or whatever it was, we go on the road and beat a top 5 team in the country. Yeah, that tells you the rivalry is completely back. Um, the fight, Chud, that's a whole nother discussion. I think everybody is in the wrong there. Shouldn't be trying to plant a flag. Shouldn't start a brawl because
Yep.
because they tried to plant a flag. Um, you know, the pepper spray. Is that necessary? And if it is, then it's really bad that it's necessary that there's pepper spray used by the police. So that's an ugly scene. Doesn't need to happen. And then this thing about Day is you said 1-4. I'd forgotten that Harbaugh was 0-5 before they started winning up there. So you can turn it around, but they obviously started from a much better spot than Harbaugh did. And to watch it, all the buddies
Yeah.
and all that success, and then for it to be reversed on your watch, I get the anger. I do. I get the anger. I get the frustration from fans. And it, like you said, it might just turn out to be too much for him to overcome.
Yeah. And I will tell you this, I can pretty much guarantee that if he does get fired, the next coach and I will not look alike.
I was just going to say that, Judd. You're going to have to find a new Halloween costume.
No doubt. All right. Well, that was a good conversation. I have a really good story about pepper spray and a post Ohio State Michigan game, but it'll take me like 5 to 10 minutes to tell. So remind me in January and February, right around that time, I'll tell that story.
I love that. We'll give people a reason to stay tuned in the offseason.
Yeah. This is a fantastic story. I used to work in Toledo and I was covering the game as a photographer. And everyone stormed the field at the shoe, and I got a heck of a story for you.
Okay,
cool. So save that for a rainy day. But let's get back to the Browns because that's our main topic. But that was good, Ohio State, Michigan. I like that.
Yeah,
that was fun to talk about. Prime time, boy. I mean, if you didn't know better, you'd think the Browns were a team you'd want to have in prime time all the time.
Well, that's the Jameis factor, isn't it? I think that's the biggest part of it. And it's not all of it. Yeah, the snow helped in that Thursday night win over Pittsburgh. Myles Garrett helps. Denzel Ward is playing great and had a couple big plays again on Monday night. But it's Jameis Winston. He just brings so much enthusiasm, energy. And this is before the game, right? Just his presence, his personality adds something to it. You watch all the national guys talk about Jameis Winston. It's crazy. People light up when they talk about him just because he has that presence about him. But then you put him on the field, and, I think geez, he's been doing it for 10 years. He can make every throw. He energizes an offense. He jumpstarts the offense. We saw how bad the Browns were under Deshaun Watson, with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. And Jameis Winston flipped that. And now the offense moves. And Jerry Jeudy gets involved and has a huge game. And Elijah Moore and David Njoku, all the guys. He gets everybody involved. They're making big plays. The offense moves. He knows where to go with the ball. He gets it out of his hand pretty quick. He slides in the pocket. All these good things. All the reasons why all of a sudden the offense is worth watching. And there's some productivity. More than 20 points a game, more than 300 yards, all those things that the Browns were struggling to do with Watson at quarterback. He has provided all those. And yes, there's been minor changes. They're not all minor. Yes, the offensive line is more stable than it was. David Njoku's healthier than he was. They made the play caller switch. I think all those things, I'm not dismissing those, but I think they're all take about a back seat and are way down the list to the reason the offense is so much better is Jameis Winston. He makes the line better, he makes all the receivers better, and I think the play calls have been the same with Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey. Jameis Winston is just executing them. So I give him all that credit. And he makes it fun to watch. And as bad as the Browns were early, they were also as boring. And that has changed. And I think from a fan perspective, even from a media perspective, that's nice. Like it's a whole new world. It's refreshing. Now you have to deal with the bad side. And he's had the bad side pretty much throughout his whole career where he can make a critical mistake. And he made two or three of them against the Bengals or against the Broncos. Three interceptions, two pick sixes. Obviously, they're the plays of the game. If he doesn't throw them, the Browns probably win. Then they get down near the goal line at the end, trying to pull off a miracle, and he throws another interception. Um, so it's a roller coaster ride with Jameis Winston. You kind of know that. So to me, it's a two-tier discussion, Chud. Is one you have, he's so fun to watch. He's energized this team and energized the season as much as it can be at 3-9. And then you have this discussion of, okay, is there a future with him as your potential starter? Can you coach him out of making so many mistakes, of throwing so many interceptions? And I think those are the two discussions you have to have when you're talking about Jameis Winston.
Yeah, it's called the Jameis Winston effect for a reason. And I mean, man, was it on full display in that game? You had both sides of it. I want to follow up with a few of the things that you just said. Hopefully, I can remember them all because there's a lot to dive into just with him alone. But the first thing is, and I know I don't know. Yeah, I know for sure. You asked Stefanski yesterday, basically, and I paraphrase, and you'll know better than I do because it was your question, but it had something to do with can he be different? Basically, I think your question was, it's just is this what you're always going to get with him? Because this is what we've seen with him on other teams, and now we've seen it up close and personal with the Browns, or can it be different? So I guess, does Stefanski think it can change, and do you think it can change?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. We've seen this for 10 years. That's a scouting report on Jameis Winston. Um, can you coach him out of it? And he said, hey, we're always, and Stefanski doesn't give great answers, but he said, you're always coaching your guys. You're always trying to get them better. You believe at any stage in their career they can improve. And, this is paraphrasing, but that will continue to be a focus for them and Winston. And I think coaches just generally believe they can help guys and fix guys. So yeah, I don't think they've given up on the idea that this is just who Jameis Winston is. Now, it could come to a point, maybe not this year, but let's say if he were your starter in 2025, where if he threw two picks a game for the first 5 weeks, then you might have to sit him down. Like, it does get to that point. You've seen it across the league. Guys threw too many picks. That's the end of it. You saw it, and I'm not comparing Jameis Winston with PJ Walker, but last year, PJ Walker was winning some games as that backup emergency quarterback, and Stefanski said, I can't live with this guy. He's making too many critical mistakes. I got to get him out of there. So you could see that. But my opinion is, yes, he can get better at this. And I have a couple reasons for that. Number one is in 2021, when he was with Sean Payton with New Orleans, Winston started the first 7 games before he tore his ACL. They were 5-2, and he threw 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. That kind of ratio wins you a bunch of games. And Sean Payton is a great offensive coach. I think Kevin Stefanski is a great offensive coach. And maybe not to that level. Payton's won a Super Bowl. I get it. But I do think they're both really good offensive coaches. So with the right plan, the right coaching, I do think we have a sample size. And it's not that small. It's a 7-game sample size where Winston did what he needs to do. And the second part of that is he hasn't started a bunch of games since then. He tore the ACL. The next season, he started 3 games, got hurt, lost his starting job. Then he didn't start again until this season with the Browns. And it's only been 5 games. He wasn't the starter in training camp. So I think there's reasons to believe that he can get better, that more reps, more time on task, more time with Stefanski and Dorsey, all those things could help Winston limit those critical mistakes, those interceptions. And, yes, he's been a quarterback, he's been in the league for 10 years, but it's only been 5 starts. Like, I think people want to jump to all these conclusions and say, this is who he still is. I'm not willing to say that. I think there is a chance that he can cut down on the interceptions. And when you pair that with the explosion brings to the offense, he is certainly a guy worth considering as your starting quarterback for 2025.
So the point after on Channel 3, cheap plug, Mary Kay, Jason Lloyd joined Nick Camino. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you brought it up. You brought up the offensive line. And at the very end of the point after, Mary Kay brought up the offensive line and kind of alluded to the fact of if this offensive line was healthy with Deshaun, would have we seen a different Deshaun? That's kind of what she didn't blatantly come out and say that, but she reminded everyone that the line is healthy now and it wasn't back then. You just brought it up too, but you said it's down at the bottom.
Yeah.
How big of a deal is that? Do you think that we're not giving Deshaun enough credit and maybe he would be better with that line?
No.
And even worse, even worse, do you think the Browns might think that and then bring him back?
No, that's a great question, Chud. I think I don't know what the Browns are going to do. I think there's a chance Watson's back just because of the financials. I don't think they can bring him back as a starter. I think they realize that. I'm not sure they can even bring him back on the team. That will be figured out in the offseason. And if they can figure out a way to get rid of him and, save some money or however they are going to make the salary cap work. I don't think that's been determined yet. And that's, probably the biggest question heading into the offseason. When it comes to the offensive line, I don't think that's a major factor in this. And I say that because when Winston took over, the line was not a finished product. And
right,
it made a difference right away. That Ravens game, his first start, they went out and scored more than 20 points for the first time this season. They won the game. He gets rid of the ball way quicker than Watson. He sees the field better than Watson. He makes better decisions than Watson. He slides in the pocket as opposed to kind of running around with no plan like Watson does. I'm not going to say there's no impact there. Like I said, I'm not going to say there's no impact in having a healthy David Njoku. Those things matter. I don't think they're the reason at all. And I think if you dropped Deshaun Watson into this scenario, the Browns would still be bad. The offense would be unwatchable, and he would still be bad. That's my take. I think it's clear. It's clear to me that the difference is Jameis Winston. He makes everybody else better. And we've talked about this before, Chuck. The argument can't be, hey, you need a great receiving core, you need great tight ends, you need a great running game, you need a great offensive line, and then Deshaun Watson might be okay. That can't be the argument for a $230 million quarterback. And Winston did not have a running game against the Broncos, and it didn't matter because he can make every throw, and he's not afraid to make every throw, and he gives his receivers chances. And I just did not see that from this iteration of Deshaun Watson with the Browns.
Yeah. And we finally saw Jerry Jeudy. I mean, if you are a fantasy football owner or a Broncos fan, you just kept waiting for him to break out. The Browns get him, and we've always kind of wondered if he could be the top pick that he was. Set career highs with 9 receptions, 235 yards, a touchdown, had a blast doing it, was obviously taunting the crowd, loving going up against his team. And he did this, Scott, all after the quotes that he made last week about facing his former team. Was that the coming out party for Jerry Jeudy? I mean, is he a legit number one? I mean, how should we feel about this?
Yeah, I'm not ready to say legit number one, and maybe that's maybe I should. Maybe I'm being too hesitant on that. But
I agree.
It's certainly the coming out party for him. There's no doubt about it. And it's not just that Broncos game. It goes back 5 games. I'm going to look it up right now. But he went into the game like he was top five over the previous 4 weeks, I want to say, averaging 95 yards a game. And he had the big catch against the Saints. He had the 89-yard touchdown, which helps the stats, but it's been a trend here. And so he went starting with Baltimore. He went 5 for 79, 7 for 73, 6 for 142, 6 for 85, 9 for 235. And there's two touchdowns in there. So this is the culmination of a good stretch for Jerry Jeudy, which coincides, obviously, with Jameis Winston. I mean, before the 5 catches against Baltimore, he had 3 straight games with 1 catch. So huge jump. The biggest thing for me, Chud, before we get to the number one receiver thing, is when you talk to Jeudy, and he made it clear last week heading into the Broncos game, he was always open. Like, that's what he said. He goes, hey, I was open in Denver. They couldn't get me the ball. The failure was on them. And he admitted having some drops as a rookie. And there were some injuries. Like, there was some inconsistency. But his point was, hey, it's not my fault. I'm open. You got to get me the ball. And I know he felt that way early in the season because he would say that. There's opportunities. And he says that every week. There's opportunities. And that's one of the frustrations that receivers have is it's not only on them, right? The protection needs to hold up. The quarterback needs to get them the ball. The play call's got to be right. That, they're the result, but it's not all on them. And when he gets the opportunity, I think he's proved that he will take advantage of those. And he does get open a lot. And that was crystal clear in Denver on Monday night. I think he's got good hands. That doesn't mean he doesn't drop balls. He's had some drops even this year. But I think overall, he's got good hands. He's got wiggle. He's a good route runner. All those things that made him the Biletnikoff winner at Alabama and a number 15 pick in the draft. You can see those. So I think I don't think this is any flash in the pan. I think if you have a legitimate quarterback in a good offensive system, he will thrive. Now, does that mean he's a top 10 receiver in the league? I don't know. I mean, right now he's fifth in the league in yardage after that huge game. So I don't know, Chad. I'm not ready to say that, but I'm also stopping short of going, no, he's not a number one because I know he certainly considers himself a number one.
Yeah, I think that you make all valid points there, no question. And he certainly could be. Let's see it a little bit more. I know you backed it up as saying that it's been a progression, but I pretty much back you on that. Let's hit two things on the defense. People blame the pick sixes, and no doubt. I mean, listen, there's no doubt the pick sixes cost them the game. But then you got to go on the other end. Would have they been in the game had it not been for Winston in the first place? We already kind of went over that.
Sure.
I am, of course, going to look at this. Scott, 3rd and 11, and your defense gives up a 93-yard touchdown. To me, that's as bad as a pick six. I mean, that's like a pick six on the other end. Like, that's your defense who, by the way, we know the Jameis effect. We know what we're going to get with him. The defense, again, is supposed to be your strength and gives up that play. That can't happen. And now we see that week in and week out, them giving up big plays. So I guess we need to be used to it. But like that's a huge play in this game. That's not good.
Oh my gosh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about that, Chud. And I'm looking forward to talking to Jim Schwartz about that because I think he will give us some insight into that call, into whether he regrets the call or just poor execution. I don't know if he was trying to get cute there, and not to get too in the weeds, but you look at people, you read people, and you talk to people, and I think the Browns are running what it's called an inverted cover two. So you have your corners playing the deep part, and your up guys, like your safeties, they're kind of underneath. Where in a normal cover two, it's the corners are underneath and the safeties are deep in the middle of the field. I don't know if he's trying to confuse Bo Nix there and get him to throw a pick. I don't know, but the Broncos wound up getting the matchup with Marvin Mims Jr., who's crazy fast, against linebacker Jordan Hicks. So he beats him down the seam, and Nick spots it, makes a great throw. Rodney McLeod doesn't follow, and I don't know if that's my guess is that's part of the scheme that he's supposed to stay underneath. And now Denzel Ward comes flying over from the left side because I think that's his responsibility. The corners are supposed to be back deep. And Ward goes for the interception. And there's a picture on AP where the ball goes through Ward's arms. So, like, should it have been an interception? And we're having a different discussion, and maybe the Browns will win the game. But he doesn't make that play, and Ward's playing great. And he was the cause of two interceptions anyway. He had a breakup that turned into a Newsome interception, then he had his own interception. Should he not gamble there and then just try to break it up or make a tackle at midfield? So I don't know the answer to that. A lot of the Browns just said, "Hey, it was a really good play by them." Hicks said he's got to do a better job. Sometimes the other team makes a good play, blah blah blah. But in that situation, Chud, do you even give him the chance to make that play, or do you play conservative, keep the ball in front of you, and make him punt? And I think that's where the discussion is, right? Because I think Denzel Ward was, like I said, this close to making an unbelievable play. But why give him that chance? Why not just force him to punt? And I'm interested to hear that Jim Schwartz discussion. But take that play out of it. They've done it all year, Chud. The defense has got way too many big plays. It's been the story of the year.
Yep.
It's been why this defense, one of the reasons this defense has been unable to live up to what it did last year.
What are your thoughts on Myles Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, I think, he didn't have any sacks. And, so he went 3 against the Chargers, none against the Saints, 3 against the Pittsburgh, none against the Broncos. There's only so much a guy can do when you're getting double and triple teamed. And I think we saw a lot of that against the Broncos. Sean Payton had a good plan for him last year in Denver. He had a good plan this year. He rolled Nix away. They get the ball, Nix gets the ball out of his hands in a hurry. So, I mean, I think Myles played hard. I think he had an impact. The first interception, the one where Ward tipped away, Nix felt Garrett coming. And he forces the throw, rushes the throw, and it turns into an interception. If he hangs on to it and doesn't force it, then Garrett gets a sack. So I think we have to look bigger than, he didn't have any sacks. I know it's easy to do. I fall into that habit sometimes. But it goes beyond that, and I think he continues to have a major impact just every week.
Well, and that's the thing, and he talks about it too. Like, no one gets game planned like he does. And with all those things that you said that they did, I mean, they're literally running their offense and choosing how to play the game based around him.
Yeah, and when you talk to Kevin Stefanski especially, but I think Myles would probably be included in this, and Jim Schwartz, that they're almost amazed when he has a huge game because teams devote so many resources to stopping him. Now, they know how special he is, and, they're not really amazed that, they expect him to get sacks. But the fact that he does it with the amount of attention paid to him, like in that Steelers game where he had the 3 sacks and the forced fumble, they were all against double teams. Like, guys don't do that. Pass rushers don't have that kind of success when they're double teamed like that. But Garrett did that day. And I don't know how much, I can't remember, Chud, if we spent time on this last week or not, but he's 98 and a half now. So he's 1.5 sacks away from 100. And he would be one of, it's either 4 or 5 guys to do that in his first 8 years. And he'd be the youngest if he does it before his birthday at the end of the month. It's rarefied air that he is in. And Jim Schwartz had the quote last week that maybe when we get to the end of Myles Garrett's career, and he said he's just hitting his prime, that he's still got way more great football left in him. Then when he gets to the end, maybe you're going to be comparing guys to him as opposed to comparing him to other guys. And I just think that speaks to the greatness of Myles Garrett. And Myles wants to be that guy. He wants to be that standalone guy. He wants to have all those records, all that stuff. And he has the ability to do that, and we see it consistently. And I think it's amazing. I mean, Joe Thomas was unbelievable, and maybe this is blasphemy, and it just popped into my head, so maybe shouldn't even say it. But I think Myles Garrett's the most talented guy I've covered, and he has the potential to go down as like a top 5 pass rusher of all time, and maybe Joe's on the same level of tackle, so maybe I shouldn't dismiss Joe, but they're both unbelievable, and we're right in the middle of Myles having this Hall of Fame career. And I just don't want people to lose sight of that, and they should appreciate that.
Yeah, let's talk about that more in January and February. I like that discussion. That's good. No question. Well, I think overall, Scott, from this game, you said it at the top. They can't finish once again. They can't win 2 in a row. They haven't done that. But they clearly are trying. They haven't quit. Big discussion so far this week in social media. I've heard it on the radio. I've heard it multiple places. Basically centers around how should fans feel after this loss? Because some people are like, it's a loss. I don't want to feel good about that. But yet they were entertained, and maybe they have some hope because of this. How do you think fans should feel after this game?
Yeah, I think you look at the game with encouragement, and you look at the season with disappointment. So obviously, nobody wanted to be 3-9. They should be better than 3-9. The reality is, Chud, and this goes back to what we talked about. If Winston starts earlier, they are better than 3-9, and that's a really frustrating part for fans. And I understand why the Browns continue to play Watson, but he did not give them the best chance to win. And if Winston had started 4 games earlier or 3 games, whatever, the Browns probably have another couple of wins. And the playoffs are still a possibility instead of, them having another losing season guaranteed. So I think overall you have to be frustrated, disappointed as a fan. But for this final month plus of the season, I think you can enjoy a fun offense. You can enjoy everything about Jameis Winston and see if the Browns can pull off some wins against Steelers, Chiefs, Bengals, Dolphins, Ravens. It's a tough final 5, but I think Jameis Winston and the way the team is playing in general gives them a chance to be in all these games. And I think that, in the small scale, is encouraging for fans and at least can be enjoyable for fans.
Man, you sound pretty high on Jameis Winston. You feel really good about him. I guess one thing is that you don't want to fall into that same thing last year where you let Flacco go to go back to what we went back to. But I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking, man, they could do it with Jameis Winston next year, but I don't know. I'm not quite there. I guess I don't know, Scott, because you're basing it on what you think could possibly happen, but I'm thinking about what he has been. He could be a fun QB to watch and make games entertaining, but I don't know if I'm convinced he could lead you to the playoffs. Maybe.
No, I'm with you, Chuck. I'm not ready to say he's a guy in 2025. I'm just saying I think he gives you a chance to win these last 5 games in 2024.
Yeah.
And I think the offense will move the ball and there will be an excitement level there. I think there are big discussions to be had for next season. I think I think how he plays in the final 5 games will affect that decision. If he stops turning the ball over and the Browns go 3-2 and beat Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Kansas City, right? I think those things would matter in the long-term quarterback decision.
Yeah. So the Browns are 3-9 right now. My brother-in-law asked me an interesting question over Thanksgiving, and he basically said if Jameis, I think that's how he worded it, but if Jameis started every game this year, and this is when the Browns were 3-8, okay, so they hadn't lost yet, what do you think the Browns' record would be if they had Jameis starting every game? So it's 11 games. What would it be in your mind? And I'm going to see if you and I are on the same page.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to say, so don't add this last game.
Okay.
This question was before they lost on Monday night. So basically, they were 3-8 after 11 games. Had Jameis started every game, what do you think their record would be?
I'm going to be conservative and say 5-6. And I think there was a chance they could have been 6-5.
It's unbelievable. That was exactly what I said.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I said. I said to him, I go 5-6, and he thought maybe they could have been 6-5, and I agreed with him. So we all on the same page.
mean, it's not hard to think that they could have beat the Giants or beaten the Raiders, and that's those weeks 3 and 4. They were close in both those. They didn't finish, and again, not all that was Watson's fault. Remember, a bunch of stuff went wrong in that Raiders game, but yeah, I don't think that's ridiculous at all. I don't think we're grasping here. I think that's reality.
Yeah. Are we ready to move on to Steelers and prediction, or do you got anything else?
No, yeah, I'm good, buddy. Let's go.
Okay. I guess the only other thing I had was Nick Chubb, and
Mm.
if you felt like they used him properly on Monday night.
Well, it's interesting because I think it was 9 carries for 21 yards. Um, he had a run of 10 yards, so the other 8 carries were for 11. He did have 2 catches. One went for 19, and the second one was a 5-yard touchdown. I think he played 29 snaps, and there were a ton of snaps. It's like 89, so I think it was 34% of the snaps. Um, I think there were a couple reasons. They went to a lot of 3 wide receivers, kind of spread it a little bit. You knew it was going to be a throwing game. Jerome Ford is better in that area. Excuse me, better as a receiver. Chubb does a great job in blitz pickup, and we saw that, I think, on the Jeudy 70-yard touchdown. Chubb did a great job in blitz pickup there. But they kind of have their personnel packages, and they went a lot with the one where Ford was in. The other part of it was they weren't running the ball well, period. And so if you're not going to run it, you know, then you don't need Chubb as much. And Chubb was struggling. And I think this is part of the progression from the knee surgery. Is he's not back to being the player he was. There's probably days where he feels better and looks better. And I don't think Monday night was one of those. So I think the coaches said, "Hey, let's go with the hot hand or the hotter hand," and that was Ford. So I think there were multiple reasons, but I think it's a reminder that Nick Chubb is not the Nick Chubb he was, and it's still a work in progress for him to get to be that guy again, if he can be that guy again.
All right, let's get to predictions here. Steelers, we know it's a big game. Browns have done well in the division. That's maybe one of the top highlights of the year, maybe,
Yeah.
is the success in the division. But man, Pittsburgh's going to want revenge big time. Just played a few weeks ago, obviously. Steelers coming off a huge win over the Bengals. We both got it right last week. We're back on the winning track. By the way, they win that game and they lose that game in Denver. They seem to always lose there, except for the one
Mhm.
game we talked about last week. But there was a couple interesting stats there, Scott, where I think that was the first time that when they were leading in the fourth quarter or something like that when they lost. And there was something else too, I remember. And then interesting too in that Denver game I saw on TV is how many yards. I mean, give the Browns offense credit. Denver's defense hadn't
Yeah.
given up like over 300 yards in a game or something like that.
They
And
were,
the Browns
yeah,
got it in the first half.
they entered as the best in the league yards per play and third in points in yards. And the Browns just marched up and down the field. Yeah, so that does add to the
Yeah,
impressiveness of Winston and the whole offense's performances.
yeah, no doubt. All right, what are you gonna do? You want to go first or second?
I'll go first, Chud. You can bring a reality back after I go with my pick here. Um, you know,
Oh boy.
right? I know. I'm setting it up. So I watched that Steelers game Sunday, and I don't even remember the final score, but I think they were in the 40s against Cincinnati. And up and down the field, Joe Burrow's throwing a bunch. Russell Wilson throws for 400. Um, and we watched the Browns in Monday night, and part of me says the way the NFL works, it's going to be about 17-16. Like these two high scoring offenses, they're moving up and down the field. I think the weather's going to be fine in Pittsburgh on Sunday, and everything should point to a shootout. But part of me says it's just the way the world, the way the AFC North works, it's going to be a slugfest. But I'm not ready to pick that way because I did watch the Steelers score all those points. I watched the Browns score all those points. So I'm going to pick some points, and I know that Pittsburgh's going to have revenge on their mind. I have little doubt that TJ Watt's going to be able to get to Jameis Winston. He didn't get a sack. He didn't have a quarterback hit in that Thursday night game. I have a hard time fathoming that happening 2 straight matchups. I think he had 2 forced fumbles against Cincinnati on Sunday. Um, I know they want revenge. I know they're trying for first place. They're trying for playoff seeding. I get all that. For some reason, I think the Browns are going to rally and they're going to come back. I think Jameis Winston's going to have another good game. He was so crushed by those pick sixes in Denver. He said he's going to pray for the Lord to take away the pick sixes. Um, I just see something crazy happening here. I'm not sure Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh is a flawed team. Maybe George Pickens gets thrown out of the game early for doing something stupid. And I'm going to go Browns 27, Pittsburgh 24.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You sure?
No, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
But I'm sticking with it for now, Chud.
Well, I'll tell you, it was great entertainment. I loved listening to it, and anyone who's listening, once this goes up on wherever it goes, whatever you call that. What do you call that exactly when it goes up?
That's a great question. It goes like there's a link on the website on Brown Zone, but it also goes in SoundCloud. I don't know. I get an alert. I get a podcast alert when it moves. I don't know. So it goes in the podcast sphere or wherever podcasts go to live.
Yeah, well, people are going to enjoy listening to that. I, man, you almost have me believe it.
It's a Jameis effect, Chud.
I feel like queuing up Journey. Don't stop believing, and just like, oh man, I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't. I'd like to, but I do see the revenge factor in Pittsburgh. I know they're doing well against the division. The way you talk, I picture it, right? I could see, all right, hey, Jameis in this offense, but at the end of the day, I just think there'll be a mistake made, and the Steelers will find a way to get it done. I'm going to go 27-19 Steelers, and they get the revenge, and, they're coming off Monday Night Football, one less day.
Yeah.
Traveling again. I just don't know. I think it's a lot to overcome. Not saying that you're 100. I'm not saying it can't happen. Like it's not. How sometimes you're like, oh, there's just no way.
Right.
I could see your scenario playing out. I could see it. I'm just not going to pick it. So give me Steelers 27-19.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like I said, I'm taking a flyer. I haven't been good picking games all year. So going out on a limb here. That's a tough place to play. Have you ever seen a game there, Chud?
Not an NFL game, but
Okay.
college.
Yeah, it's a tough place to play. It gets loud. Communications issues that gives an advantage to Watt. Alex Highsmith's coming back. Now they got 3 guys at outside linebacker. It's not going to be easy. It certainly would be a stunner if the Browns did it. But for whatever reason, I'm going to pick them. So, I don't have a ton of confidence in it, but I just got that little feeling, so we're going to ride that. So.
You got a feeling. Black Eyed Peas, man. You got a feeling.
Hey, there you go. See?
That's my last music. That's my last music reference. Yeah.
You're on a little bit of a run there.
Yeah.
So,
if there's a song called "I Need to Go Take a Nap," cue it up because that's where I'm going now. Buddy.
Yeah, to write one of those. Well, Chud, I appreciate it as always, buddy. This was I had fun doing this one. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks.